Quorn was approved for sale in the UK in 1985 and is enjoyed by millions of people. But some consumers have reported a violent reaction after eating it.
I was in the bathroom with violent vomiting and diarrhea every 15 minutes for an hour to an hour and a half.
And just constantly being sick. It was like food poisoning.
By the time I got to the end of the meal, I just couldn't wait to get to the toilet.
They took me straight into hospital and I had to be put on a drip.
And I thought I was going to die, and I was alone. And I had nobody to help me, to talk to. It was scary.
I thought I was dying at one point. It was just horrendous.
The Center for Science in the Public Interest is a consumer advocacy group based in Washington, D.C. Most of CSPI's work has been focused on nutrition and food safety, and Quorn was one of those ingredients that I had questions about beginning 20 years ago.
See, when you go to the supermarket, and this very attractively packaged product is there representing something that is not meat but is like it. You can make the same sort of recipes just using that as an alternative.
So first I thought Quorn was fine, and then I learned of people having adverse reactions to it. And the more I learned about it, and then we publicized it somewhat, and we began receiving hundreds of reports of adverse reactions, mostly gastrointestinal, diarrhea, vomiting, less frequently asthma, rashes, hives, that could lead to serious anaphylactic reactions. And I should say, most consumers of Quorn do not have a reaction. They do perfectly well. But some percentage, maybe as many as 5% of people, do experience a problem.
Quorn comes in distinctive bright orange packs and is usually found in the chilled meat-free sections of supermarkets. But what exactly is Quorn?
I thought Quorn would have been made from a mixture of vegetables. I assumed it was some sort of soya-based product.
I can't remember if it's a bacteria or a fungus that grows on mushrooms.
I had been led to believe that it was something to do with mushrooms, things like mushrooms. It isn't.
Well, for many years, at least in the United States, labels of Quorn and information on the website said that Quorn is related to mushrooms and truffles. They tried to convey the notion that you're basically eating a mushroom burger. But in fact, the key ingredient of Quorn, which they called mycoprotein, is really a soil fungus, a mold. And then they mix it with eggs and wheat and salt and various other food additives. But they still don't acknowledge that Quorn can cause these adverse reactions.
The stomach spasms and the dizziness and nausea lasted for 3 days.
The Latin name for the mold is Fusarium venenatum. And venenatum means venomous. This really is venomous. It does cause serious adverse reactions in all too many people.
I was violently ill, literally every 20 minutes for several hours.
We first heard from hundreds of people when there were some newspaper articles, and people would write us letters. Once we put this notice on the web, we began to get thousands of adverse reaction reports.
I was online looking, and that morning I was able to see that one person had died. That's what was super alarming to me, and also was able to go see through my search that I could report my symptoms and my reaction online. So I did, right away, because I thought this is really serious.
If you have expensive litigation because somebody has had a big health problem because of eating something, then surely that means that there is a warning light coming on and that something has to be done, that the public need to be made aware.
On the way home from work, I was on the motorway in my car and my stomach was turning, and I just knew that I'd had Quorn for lunch. So I was really annoyed that the catering manager at my school was unable to tell me what I was eating.
So it appears that not all catering staff are being alerted to any potential allergic reactions to eating Quorn.
We commissioned a telephone survey in the United Kingdom and found 400 people said they had consumed a Quorn product. And then we said, well, did you experience an adverse reaction? And something like 4.5% of those people said they experienced an adverse reaction. And that's probably the best compilation of information about the health effects of Quorn.
Quorn currently state that an adverse reaction occurs only once in 1.85 million servings.
Quorn contends that only a minuscule number of people are adversely affected. The way they present their information is very misleading. Sometimes they say, well, we've only received this many adverse reaction reports, but obviously very few people write a letter to the company saying, oh, we had a problem. And then sometimes they say, well, it's only one adverse reaction for every 1.8 million servings. But that's misleading because the people who have adverse reactions may stop eating it after one serving, whereas people who do not have adverse reactions might eat 10, 20, 30 servings of Quorn. As far as I know, no other meat substitute causes these kinds of adverse reactions.
It probably is a small percentage of society, but we need to know that should we have a bad reaction to it, that we are possibly allergic to it, and to avoid it in future. That isn't going to massively cut down their market share, but it will show them as being a responsible company.
Consumers expect companies to be clear about what their food products contain, about possible adverse reactions, and not to publish misleading advertising.
I've seen some Quorn advertising that is, again, deceptive. A woman is holding a little green plant, a seedling, in some dirt, and the implication is that Quorn is related to a plant. It's not. It's a mold. And if Quorn is related to anything in that ad, it is the soil that that plant is in.
Quorn is marketed as being an excellent source of protein, but how nutritious is it?
Quorn is decently nutritious. The makers of Quorn have sometimes said, well, these adverse reactions may be caused by the high content of protein or fiber. It doesn't have all that much protein or fiber. It has less protein than a simple hamburger, and it has about as much dietary fiber or roughage as 2 pieces of whole wheat bread. Those don't cause these kinds of adverse reactions. It is the mycoprotein, the mold, that is causing the adverse reactions.
I don't think people understand at all the severe effects that an allergy to Quorn can cause.
The average consumer of Quorn is blissfully unaware of the potential risk in consuming the product. And if there's small print somewhere that says may cause occasional rare reactions, is the word they use. But at least there's some information on the label. If you eat a Quorn product at a restaurant or a sporting event or a school, there's no label whatsoever. You're left in the dark. You don't know what it is.
So, the big question is, why do consumers see an allergy warning on packs bought in shops, but not when purchased from food outlets?
I recently discovered that they're starting to put this in commercial products in restaurants. And that's a scary thing because I know that I'm allergic to it. I have a very violent allergic reaction to this product. But I know to avoid it in the store because it's in a package, it has its name on it, it says what it is. The scary thing for me would be that you go to a restaurant and consume the product without knowing it.
I'd been to a music festival, so I had the vegetarian option, not knowing that it had Quorn in. I only found out later when I became very ill.
So eating out, I will not eat any meat replacement products because I can't be 100% sure it's not Quorn.
It does need that level of awareness. So particularly the catering industry, people working there know that it can have that effect, and they're careful about people being aware of it.
But currently, many consumers are confused as to the difference between mold and mycoprotein.
I am not aware of the difference between mycoprotein and mold.
Quorn is the brand name for foods that contain mold. The mold ingredient is called mycoprotein. And the key ingredient, that might comprise 50 or 60% of that product is the mold.
Using this term mycoprotein, which is a sort of generic term which could be anything, is not a good idea, because it means that anybody who is allergic to Quorn or finds that Quorn has not been good for them will inadvertently, in a hotel or a restaurant, eat this mycoprotein, not knowing that it's Quorn.
And sometimes asking whether food contains Quorn isn't that simple.
The average waiter doesn't understand the difference between Quorn and corn. And when you think of all the foreign-born waiters around, they have no idea. And so if somebody says, I'm allergic to corn, the waiter thinks, oh, C-O-R-N. But that's not the question. And the consumer might get the wrong answer.
I think it should be labeled like other allergens. I mean, as a vegan, I always look at the packaging because we want to see if there's dairy and eggs and things on the packaging. But mycoprotein or corn or whatever should also be in those lists, because I don't want that to be sneaking into any of the foods I eat. And I think in the future it might.
So, if you're given wrong advice in a food outlet, eat Quorn, and are subsequently ill, what are your legal rights?
A restaurant could be sued, but I think the victim would have to have asked the server at the restaurant, does this food item contain Quorn because I'm allergic to it? So the responsibility would be put on the diner, but if the restaurant is serving Quorn and didn't tell the consumer, then they clearly could be sued.
But if you're still tempted to try eating Quorn, a cautious approach is recommended.
I certainly wouldn't discourage people from trying it, but they do need to be aware that if they try it and they get a reaction, they know that it's the Quorn and they stop eating it straight away.
Read the label, take it to heart that these allergic reactions that the company itself is talking about are very real.
And be observed. Have somebody with you.
So, to eat or not to eat? That is the question.
When I pass it in the grocery store, I still have a weird feeling like, oh my gosh, they're still selling this? I can't believe it.
I cannot eat that product.
I'm just in full avoidance mode now.
I mean, I don't even like Quorn in the house anymore. Psychologically, I just can't stand to look at it.
It's quite scary to know that it's there, but it isn't being highlighted to me to be able to avoid it.
Don't touch it with a barge pole. I don't think it's real food.